In 1963, factory worker Joseph Weisfel alerted the FBI about an Elmwood Park outfit crew called the Messino and Gags Gang, led by Willie Messino and Joe Gagliano. And within the group was also the 3-Minute Gang founders Bigal Sarno and John DiFranzo. The two mob chiefs shared a chieftain position with each other after the passing of Elmwood Park mob chief Joe Gagliano. Lombardo was also a member of the Messino and Gags Gang. FBI suspected Sarno of being the successor of Joe Gagliano, who informants after breaking down under pressure would tell the FBI that in fact Accardo was actually a front boss and the real boss was actually no other than Joe Gagliano, who the FBI originally thought was the face of the mob. Now Willie Messino was also a personal capo of Accardo's at the same time, and with Gagliano and Messino sharing an actual boss position, it's possible Messino could have also been the real boss of the mob.
Truth be told, Joe Gagliano, when he was mob chief, became very sick and chose Big Al Sarno as his successor. Big Al was named mob chief and the successor of Gagliano. But it would be short-lived, as Big Al Sarno would also get sick shortly after his good pal Joe Gagliano, and Big Al Sarno would pass the torch to future undisputed boss of the outfit, John No Nose DiFranzo.
This was no big deal cause the two were partners in crime for a very long time. At this point they are the successors of Joe Gagliano and Jack Cerrone and Tony Accardo, with Jack Cerrone and Accardo staying on board to advise along with Rica, who could not stay away from retirement.
3-Minute Gang founders and only authentic members, with others being only associates. Although Sarno and DiFranzo are original members of the Messino and Gags Gang and the original Cerrone crew, Chris Carty and Doris Brown and Paul Pansco are associates, with Paul also having a double role as the crew's driver.
3-Minute Gang, also of the Messino and Gags Gang, other alias for crew. West Side loan sharking crew. The gang's turf was Elmwood Park, on the near west side.
In my opinion, as a mob specialist, after countless nights of in-depth research, I think these two made men in the caporegime would actually share the boss position. Two capos would be boss instead of one boss. Shortly after, the same was bound to happen with Sarno and DiFranzo carrying and sharing the same mob chief position, blessed by Gagliano.
You could always find Big Al with Willie Messino and Jack Cerrone. The crew all lived on 77th Avenue together after Big Al moved from Oak Park to Elmwood Park. Now, the whole crew was on 77th or close by.
Willie was a boss of his own, running the Elmwood Park crew from behind the scenes for many years as the crew's trusted and loyal skipper, and he wasn't afraid to go with his crew to handle business with the loyal crew's opposition.
Willie Messino and John DiFranzo never would cooperate with the government or sit down with the feds in a million years. Same goes for the rest of Messino and Gags Gang, and knew the only way a real organized crime crew would work is by being loyal friends to each other. Before anything, Jackie the Lackey was also very loyal to Willie and John DiFranzo.
Every gangster's favorite gangster, John DiFranzo. New York had Luciano, and Chicago had DiFranzo, the most legendary Chicago mob boss of all time. After the Accardo era, this would become the poster boy for the Chicago mob, hand picked by Upa Accardo and Jackie the Lackey. He was loved by all the higher-ups for a reason. He was the motherfucking one who called the motherfucking shots. Now, respect the title. He will always be a true gangster, despite what some teen with zits on his face says about him.
When Willie Messino was named Street Boss VP by Accardo, who overseen Elmwood Park with Iapar, and Accardo deciding to move operations from Cicero to Elmwood Park, which was more low-key and off-limits to robbers and thieves.
This is because a lot of the bosses lived there or close by in nearby neighborhoods. Original Elmwood Park mob chief Joe Gags Cagliano. Because you had so many bosses living in one neighborhood, just think of how many lived on 77th Avenue alone. Joe Gags Cagliano, former chief of Elmwood Park. Jack Cerrone, reputed mob boss of the outfit before going to prison and coming back out to an underboss position, as John was in full control, but liked having Cerrone, former boss, his underboss, cause he listened well John, unlike Carlisi, who didn't listen to John when he was John's underboss before going to prison. Elmwood Park legend and former boss of the Chicago outfit, Jack Cerrone. 77th Avenue heavy hitter Willie the Beast Messino, in my opinion, the toughest man in the outfit. Hands down, his name is the Beast 'cause he was tough and strong like a beast. Joey the Clown Lombardo, an original member of the real Messino and Gags Gang, was also one of the toughest men in the outfit, along with Big Albert Sarno, who Messino liked having around 'cause Big Al was one of the largest in size out of the enforcers and could be a monster to fight against, and same goes for Mike Swiatek, the last man to back down, and Big Al looked like the mobster version of Herman Munster. His hands and feet and everything about him were large. Big Al was no stranger to weapons, but was such a large man that he could walk up to you and rip your head off with his bare hands. He could walk up and choke a guy out just by creeping up, and wasn't afraid to shoot it out either. He also didn't care who you knew or you were connected with. Sarno and Swiatek were both like that. Swiatek was a member of the second faction of the crew led by Lombardo. John DiFranzo was a ladies' man and the boss, but this is John and one of his closest friends, long-time DiFranzo pal Keely Smith. Whenever Keely was in town, she would stay with Johnny. He was a stand-up guy who led a good life, and the man had class unlike some of today's new blood. Sam Carlisi would cross the line for the last time when he threatened to kill John's super tough brother, maybe the toughest out the bunch. Even though I personally think Pete was the toughest, Frank Jr. said Joe was. They were all good with their hands. All the brothers had sweet knuckle game and could all hold their own and then some. He wanted Joe hit for a bad reason. The mob has always been against drugs, but Joe was selling marijuana. That's not considered a drug to anyone, especially these days, with medical marijuana being popular and loved by many, with war vets finally getting some relief from PTSD. That Joe got busted for his marijuana grow operation, and Sam told his own brother John that he wanted him dead for breaking the rules, but Sam would have looked past that but didn't, and took note of it and ordered Joe to be hit.
Subscribe to the channel, True Gangsters of Yesterday, and feel free to donate via Cash App, and PayPal. Link to donate is in my bio.
Johnny would play dumb with Carlisi and act like he was with him on his final decision. Then he would hide his brother Joe. Eventually Sam Carlisi would be locked up and in prison, and John was able to get Joe out of hiding and also made him capo of Elmwood Park.
Investigators learned in 1961, on March 9th, that the West Side loan sharking crew was meeting up with Willie Potatoes Dardano, who was keeping an eye on rackets in DuPage, Kane, and McHenry counties. Dardano had some advice for the West Side crew.
Dardano wanted them to expand their influence
by turning loan sharking profits into legitimate businesses, which was a brilliant idea. The gang then met with William Dardano and Mad Sam DiStefano, who was the mob chief of the Northwest Side, being Oak Park's chief and leading loan shark, with his own crew of loan sharks from Oak Park. With Carlisi in prison, John's brother Pete DiFranzo became his long-time trusted underboss, and Marcod'amico became his long-time consigliere. The crew was real fucking tight at this point, with plenty of legit income to show. Joe Lombardo would become John's #1 street boss, running the Grand Avenue crew and the Vegas skim back home in Chicago. Joe was to make sure the Spilatro brothers, who ran Vegas for the mob, were kicking up to the old bosses back home via Joe Lombardo. Elmwood Park former skipper Jackie the Lackey with Chinatown former skipper Angelo the Hook La Pietra. Can you name any of these true gangsters of yesterday? Leave your answers in the comments section.
Sam Carlisi had his own crew, the Melrose Park Crew, with his enforcer Louis Eboli, son of Tommy Eboli, New York gangster of the Genovese family, sent to be with the outfit in Chicago after his father was killed in New York.
He would become one of Tony Spilatro's capos back home while Tony ran Vegas for the Chicago mob with Joey Lombardo of the West Side Loan Sharking Crew and former Messino and Gags Gang original member who went on to be skipper of the Grand Avenue crew was in charge of the Vegas skim back home.
Joe Lombardo was also in charge of all street beefs. A case was built against the gang after Sarno and Lombardo enforcers at the time, along with John DeFronzo and Willie Messino, and Joe Gags would handle a situation with factory worker Weisful. The Messino and Gags gang was accused of the kidnapping of the worker. Joseph Weisful originally owed outfit members the Greco brothers money after refusing to pay the respected brothers who were plugged and connected and also related to Sarno. A would alert Sarno's close pal Messino about the incident.
One day after work at the factory, he would be approached by the Greco brothers who were part of the Messino and Gags gang and the EP crew, and they brought along someone they wanted Joe Weisful to meet. They said, "Hey Joe, this is Willie Messino. He's really good at breaking bones." Shortly after, the factory worker was snatched by the gang and beaten and dragged into a tavern called Lucky's owned by Sarno. After landing in court, Sarno would change the name to the Pussycat A-Go-Go.
Messino would have his main enforcer live right across from him, and the two even had matching cars back then, that they both picked out at the same time. Jack was also on 77th and the corner of Armitage, but his house was on the 77th side, and John and Pete DeFronzo on 75th. Joe Ferriola also liked to hang around. Gagliano, Muscleman, Bigal, Sarno, also of the 3-Minute Gang and original Elmwood Park crew, went from enforcer to short-lived chieftain.
Not much is known about the friendship between Sarno and Ferriola, but they were working together in the outfit, as Joe Ferriola would frequent Elmwood Park before becoming skipper of his own crew, the infamous Cicero crew.
Here is most of the gang together, starting with Syndicate leader Willie Messino, Chris Cardi, Big Albert Sarno and Joe Gagliano, former mob chief, sitting next to Sarno, who he made his successor.
This is an article from a news report in the Chicago Tribune where the FBI suspects Big Albert Sarno to be Joe Gagliano's new successor.
Tony Accardo was more of a figurehead boss. Fellow hoods would look at Willie Messino, Big Al Sarno, John DeFronzo, Jack Cerrone and Joe Gags Gagliano as the real chiefs of the Chicago Mafia, with Accardo and Rica both being figureheads and Iappa having more of higher-up role in the administration, in close contact with his main man John DeFronzo and Jackie the Lackey.
Shout out to everyone who has been supporting true gangsters of yesterday.
Here is some more bonus content for my supporters.
Plus a small recap of the story. Jackie the Lackey's racketeering file.
Rica and Accardo would share a position prior. I think Accardo liked to personally share his position with Cerrone and John DeFronzo, as well as Joey Iappa. Later, after Big El Sarno got sick, John DeFronzo and Iappa would carry the torch. Cerrone, after being a reputed boss, would do sometime. but eventually get out and advise DeFranzo and Iappa ruling the mob with an iron fist. Prior to this, crews would rise through the ranks such as the 3-Minute Gang, the Messino and Gags Gang.
Reputed and undisputed mob boss John DeFranzo, also known as Johnny Bananas. His other nickname is Johnny No Nose, which is a catchy nickname, but John disliked it. You didn't call him that if you were in the street or a member of the outfit. Loyal hoods respectfully called him Johnny Bananas, coming from his wild days pulling off wild and crazy heists that sent John to the top as the top earner. FBI also suspected his pals D'Amico and Sarno as having the highest net worth. Willie's nickname that is well-deserved and fitting is the Beast. He is known as Willie the Beast Messino. Calling him Wee Willie, his other alias, is something he didn't like, much like DeFranzo didn't like the nickname No Nose, and Sarno's close pal Phil Aldercio hated the alias Milwaukee Phil. Chicago hoods always hated Milwaukee, being nothing more than a farm team for the real Chicago mob.
Phil would go to Dairyland to fight as a boxer, but would end up being questioned as a suspect in the murders of some Milwaukee wannabe hoods who crossed Phil, who was mob chief at the time.
Charges were brought against the Messino and Gags Gang in 1963. Willie Messino, Joe Gagliano, Big Albert Sarno, Joey the Clown Lombardo, Chris Cardi, and John DeFranzo were charged with the kidnapping of Joe Weisful. DeFranzo was accused of being one of the men who tortured Weisful. The gang, when brought to court, refused to get fingerprinted, and they all tried to look down or close their eyes or squint them while the photos were being taken of the syndicate leaders. Chris Cardi and Big Albert Sarno are ex-police officers who had left the force prior to joining the Chicago outfit as enforcers. They weren't crook cops. They quit the force before any mafia ties were made. A mistrial was called after the ex-policemen tried to bribe a juror and were held in contempt as the gang became angry and frustrated with the court system. The gang was brought back to court, and Joe Lombardo was released because Joe Weisful could not identify him. Weisful told the jury the crew snatched and grabbed him and was pushed down into the basement of a tavern in Elmwood Park and beat down by the gang. After a trial of 7 days, the court found the informant to be unconvincing as a witness. After a long trial, the other 5 defendants were also found not guilty and were all released. They were all acquitted. Thanks for watching. Part 2 of this mini documentary coming soon. Feel free to donate to the channel. Shout out to all my true gangsters. Till next time on True Gangsters of Yesterday. Feel free to donate any amount via Cash App or support the channel in another way. Tell a friend, subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and smack that bell like a true gangster so you don't ever miss another notification, and share these videos. Much love from True Gangsters of Yesterday. Just scan the QR code from my Cash App to donate to the channel. You choose the amount. Any amount is appreciated and does not go unnoticed. I hope everyone has enjoyed this documentary. I have been working on it for a while now. More content on the way.